Welcome to Women Driving Change, everyone, at the Amplifying Her Voice Global Summit, Virtual Summit. Delighted to be here with all these amazing women here today, sharing their inspiring stories of how they're amplifying other women's voices and supporting girls of today. I'm going to allow 2 more people into this session who may be having technical issues. So we're just going to go ahead and get started with who's been allowed access right now. And I'd like to start off the conversation with Isabel Rignes from Norway, who's been working on an initiative called Equality Check. So could you please tell us a little bit about what you're doing, Isabel? I'm going to go on mute so we save bandwidth.
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much for arranging all of this on there. This is incredible. So many awesome women. My co-founder and I started working with gender equality back in 2015. We were both passionate about unconscious bias and gender stereotypes, and we really wanted to address it in society. And at the time, in one of the most gender equal countries in the world, we were kind of laughed at. They said that this is not an issue, find something better to do. But then eventually we saw that society was kind of coming to an agreement that, okay, this is actually an issue, and this might be the reason why we do see that there's still a big gender divide, specifically at the top of management in almost all sectors in Norway. And having worked with it 2 years, we then started another campaign, and we saw that, okay, now there's a will to do something about it, but the problem is that no one knows what to do. And then we went into dialogue with various different research institutions and saw that, okay, there is no research that shows exactly what works when it comes to improving diversity in different corporations. So we embarked on a research project, and in that we saw that, okay, the only thing that we can actually do in order to improve this is have more data and more transparency on what the status is actually like. So long story short, we decided to build Equality Check, which is a platform for anonymous reviews about how people experience the culture and diversity and inclusion at their workplace. But they also give away or give us some information about their kind of unique traits, so that employers are also able to tell how different people are perceiving their company from their unique perspective, and also other people are able to understand how people who share their unique traits actually feel about our equal opportunities in their workplace. And then in addition to that, we have a digital report where companies can report their own data, and then based on that, we identify their problem areas and suggest evidence-based solutions as to how they can improve, and we continuously update those solutions as our research project continues. So in short, that's what Equality Check does. You're muted, Anu.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. So we're going to jump around the screen. I want to ask Alyssa what she's been doing with her initiative and how she's driving change with specifically when it comes to voice.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Weinzimmer, and I'm the founder of Voice Body Connection. And I really love the title of this entire event, Amplifying Her Voice, because my work in the world is around voice. And essentially, I'm a coach. I work with people on having a healthy voice in terms of physical larynx, etc. And I also work on a mental, emotional, spiritual level with our voices. And I actually just before this was in a session with, I have a membership community, the Voice Body Connection membership community, and we were having our monthly group coaching call, which is where we bring together, we just all come together to talk about difficult situations in our life where we're having trouble speaking our truth, and really speak honestly and openly about it. And something I'll say too is something that means a lot to me in terms of talking about women and voices and speaking up is there's rhetoric that has gone around the world, which says, we'll say things like, this is a safe space. And I believe that we actually can't guarantee anyone a safe space, unfortunately, because someone may show up and say something that offends someone else. obviously there are parts of the world, and we're discussing that here in this gathering, where people can't speak their truth because they will literally be in danger. And so that needs to be held in consideration. And what I like to call it is creating a compassionate space. And even just coming together to have this conversation, what we're doing is having compassion, expressing ourselves authentically, encouraging others to, express themselves authentically, listening to each other. And in doing so, we at least create a compassionate space, and that can create more safety for everyone. So ultimately my mission around voice work is to, on a literal level, help everyone have a voice. And that's my purpose.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So Priya and I were on a session yesterday. It was on blockchain for impact. She's more of a techie. It's coming at it from a different aspect. And this is all about diversity, this diversity in every possible shape, way, shape, or form. And many of us are in this space with diversity and inclusion. And that also has to do with conversation, thought, action, and what we do for the world. So I would like Priya to tell us a little bit about, what she's working on now and how it's creating inclusion.
Sure. Thanks, Anu. Pleased to be here. Hi, everybody. I'm Priya Gulyani. I'm a technology entrepreneur passionate about inclusion, sustainability, and climate impact. Just to focus on inclusion element, I am originally from India, and I moved to UK about 6 years ago to work for a consulting organization. And I was also the inclusion and diversity advocate there. Currently, I am the head of operations for Government Blockchain Association in the UK. GBA is a global non-profit organization that brings together governments around the world, facilitating efficient and ethical adoption of blockchain technology. Finally, I'm also the UK Senator for WBAF, which is the World Business Angel Investment Forum that works towards easing access to finance for entrepreneurs, increasing gender equality, and expanding financial inclusion globally. And I think everybody would resonate with me here that when we talk about women entrepreneurs, then we have sort of the same challenges: imposter syndrome, lack of funding, lack of visibility, lack of celebration. And I think those are the key issues that we all face, and definitely passionate to solve all of these challenges and hold everybody's hand to move together. And that's how we basically see success. That when you open a door for yourself, ensure that you can let some other people in as well.
Awesome. Johan, would you like to follow up on that with your work on diversity and inclusion as well, please?
Yeah, hi. So thank you for having me. My name is Jojo Penny. I'm the founder and CEO of a consultancy called Amp Up Your Voice. There's a coincidence there on the name for your conference, but I founded Amp Up Your Voice in early 2020. It's an anti-racism, anti-equality and diversity consultancy. I work with modern and progressive organisations, corporations to really start them on their journey for equity in the workplace. And it really is the beginning of the journey. And ensuring that diversity and inclusion are at the forefront of their minds, and work to elevate their brand as well. And particularly, in light of, events that happened last year, the propelling of Black Lives Matter in the mass media, I feel like we're at a real sort of a moment in history where there's been some real recognition across the world and across organisations that we have a real opportunity to really shift the dial, to make some tangible changes. Like I said, there's no quick fix. This is systemic racism that's been going on for hundreds of years. But what I do for Amp Up Your Voice is work with those organisations, work with those companies on that journey. And 2020 was a call to action. 2021 is now about actually what are you going to do about it, and what are those tangible changes that you're going to make as an organisation to ensure equity and equality. And I do have a particular focus on women. and particularly Black women. So obviously there's an intersectionality. You know, we know women hit the glass ceiling, and particularly Black women hit the glass ceiling, and particularly when it comes to board, senior executive level, exco level, which is you know, the level that I deliver at. So it's really about collaborating with women. You know, I think we as women now have to be advocates, and we need to drop the ladder down and, you know, help the next generation up, because that hasn't happened historically. And I think now, particularly for Black women, we're at a real juncture where, you know, we can help the next generation to really excel. And, you know, looking at our statistics, we know there are no Black women in the FTSE 100, top 100 companies, or black men. So, you know, we've got a lot of work to do. Amp Up Your Voice is there, as are a lot of you women as well. And just two other things. I'm a Black culture writer for Millennial Femme. So that's the social media platform, which is all about empowering women and empowering Black women. And I'm a motivational expert speaker. So you can find me at getapeptalk.com for a talk on racial equality and diversity.
Fantastic. So when we get deeper into this conversation, I'm going to ask Isabel to talk to us about her data sets and how, you know, they're going into companies and tracking data and things like that. And I don't know, Isabel, if this is like a new subset, a new cohort, or a different type of group. Like, I don't know how you're segmenting data that you're getting from the workplace, but there may be a whole nother dimension here outside of where you are currently operating. So we're just going to draw the connections and make the dots in real time, and that's what this conversation is about. Artika, could you tell us a little bit about your work? You came in very early to this conference with Patrice. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. My name is Dr. Artika Kiner. I'm a law professor, civil rights attorney by training. So really my platform for women in driving change and helping to amplify our voices is through my research and in the classroom. So through my research, I'm looking at trends related to increasing diversity in the legal profession and also in the public policy arena, because it's based upon my own experience in community organizing, that simple premise of God voice, God power. So now is the time. I love the piece saying 2020 was really that call to action like never before. How do we set forth a policy agenda? How do we organize people using social media, using traditional media, every outlet that's available to us? How do we raise awareness about the issues impacting gender? How do we set a clear agenda? And how do we move forward? Now has been a unique opportunity, as we talk about in the policy arena, of a window of opportunity that corporations, nonprofits, government, municipalities are looking for solutions. So now is a time where I'm really mobilizing everyday women, those ordinary women, to have an extraordinary impact in their communities. So that's the research side. I say the education side. I've been a lifelong educator, so the past 15 years teaching and inspiring young women in the arena of leadership studies. Because oftentimes we say great things to each other and we challenge the imposter syndrome. We look for ways to get involved. But the challenge is oftentimes we don't see ourselves as leaders. I remember doing a lecture on women leading change, profiling the likes of Yaa Asantewaa, that great warrior of Ghana who protected the Golden Stool. Wangari Maathai, we know her as a great scientist that helped to bring people together for the Greenbelt movement. So I was introducing all these greats. And then at the end, a woman walked up to me and said, "These things are interesting, but I'm not a leader. I'm a stay-at-home mom." It's like, you missed the whole presentation. You are leading right from your kitchen table. I asked her, "How did you start your day?" You're a CEO of your household, inspiring. And here's the irony of it. 2 young women to be change agents as well. So really for me, I serve as that motivation, that inspiration to challenge women to lead our own change in meaningful ways. I'm also a children's book author. So you see my book behind me, Justice Makes a Difference. We use this award-winning book to inspire young women to find their leadership capacity. So Young Justice is inspired by heroes and sheroes and learns how she can make a difference. Like she says it very loud and says it proud. Shirley Chisholm, so I can run for president one day. Wangari Maathai, so I can create that community garden, make a difference. So we are going from the early years of the experience of inspiring young women so they can see the truth in the mirror, that they are leaders, they are change agents, all the way up to the college classrooms and beyond. So my work is training and inspiring women to become leaders.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And it's we have a whole session on investing in girls at the end of the summit tomorrow. So that might be something that you might want to pop into in that session as well. So love to mention your work. Thank you so much.
That
Janet.
was beautiful, Tika. And I could see that everybody was smiling and nodding because we've all been there. So marvelous. Thank you.
So Janice, I want you to pop in and tell us about your podcast and what you're doing for moms, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janice Schull, and Artika, I'm so happy to follow up after you because you mentioned stay-at-home moms, and I'm host of the Money, Career, and Motherhood podcast, where we talk about all kinds of topics related to the intersection of motherhood and money. And stay-at-home motherhood is often something that comes up, a time when women step out of their power financially. And I believe that financial empowerment and business ownership are two ways that women truly can change the world. We don't just talk about stay-at-home motherhood, but we talk about all of the ways that we can improve our financial experience and develop a healthy relationship with money in order for us to all succeed. And the way financial services are often presented are in a way that's not natural to the way many women engage with and understand and feel about money. And so my goal in the podcast is to meet every mother where she is with money, and to not talk about money as the goal. It's to bring money into the conversation about the things that we already care about, what we are doing in our day-to-day lives with our families, understanding how us making a financial impact can help our children, help our families, help our communities, and go from there. As a part of that, I also help women as they fund their businesses, because I find that as women do take different transitional steps through motherhood, they want to give back to their communities and they want to build businesses, but they don't know how to do it. And as a 10-year commercial banker veteran, I think it's so important that we make sure that women are receiving the funding for their businesses. We're already starting them at a great rate, but we now need to take the next step and be able to grow them and overcome that funding gap and continue to empower women to create real solutions for other women in our communities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And on that note, Christy, you and I have spoken a few times about the power of connecting women to other women. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your work and what you're doing to amplify their voices. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you. So I recently launched Her Podcast Network. I've been podcasting since 2018, and I've actually had the pleasure of interviewing Janice for my very podcast. So it's as well. Yeah, it's a great connection. So the reason why I launched this network was when I started podcasting, I realized I was making great connections within the US space. And when I looked around here in Canada, I was trying so hard because I'm from Toronto. So I'm trying to get, connections made with women here in Canada and for obvious reasons, just making those connections locally. And I realized, and I'm like, there's no way that in Canada there aren't female podcasters. There's no way there aren't female leaders that have something to say through their mic, right? So through my work, I decided, I'm a challenge accepted type of girl. So I decided I'm going to launch a network here. It is, the podcasting space, just like my network here in Canada, is a baby. Like podcasting in Canada, it's, I think the podcasting space in general is, usually like middle-aged white men, right? That's what we think about, right? And maybe they're talking about sports on their podcast or like very serious news and they sound like this. And like, there's so much more. And mostly it's female voices to the forefront. So that's the work I do within my network. So I really want to provide those educational opportunities, networking opportunities, be able to really make those connections for female podcasters here in Canada. And of course, everyone's welcome. It is a very inclusive community. And I feel like Sorry, I'm just like looking at the chat here. Everyone's welcome. It's a very inclusive community, but of course, I think that there's certain pieces, for example, like legalities that I felt like within the US networks I'm part of, I would kind of step back from, because I'm like, the Canadian space is very different. Copyright, it's also a little bit different. So I'll be providing those extra tools for my podcasters. With the podcasters within my network. And of course, within my personal podcast, I've called myself La Mamá Rebelde, which is rebel mom, because of the fact that I'm just really going against the grain. Being a Latin American immigrant, you know, there's certain ways that motherhood is expected. And I know this is similar with my South Asian friends, or even with my Asian friends and so on. Motherhood, you have certain expectations of what motherhood is. And I feel like we are in a new time where things need to change. And it's really about elevating and empowering women to go beyond the expectations. You don't have to bounce back after pregnancy. You don't have to, you know, do things a certain way because that's the way your parents or your aunties expect you to do it, right? So it's really elevating and bringing out those pieces of them that can really cause them to live their best lives without all the judgment and pressures.
Absolutely. So I want to jump back into hard data and research, and how we're going to move and transition, like where we were, this old economy. Everything is changing. Like, as I don't know if you all have felt it, but there is a shift that's going on the planet. And some of the things that we're working on now, we're measuring, and some of the things we are not. And ultimately that transition is going to move smoother when we all are looking at the same data. I would like to ask Isabel to tell us a little bit about their experience during the pandemic, any shifts that you might have made with Equality Check, and any goals that you may have going forward this next year.
Definitely. So we launched in December 2019, which kind of sucked because we were like hiring and launching and getting companies on board. And as you guys all know very well, 3 months later, it was complete lockdown, and that presented some challenges. But as you mentioned, we kind of want to be the data source on diversity and inclusion, especially in Norway we are now, but of course we want to expand, and we're hiring a country manager in Sweden and in the UK. So if anyone knows any awesome person over there who is also a hustler, please let me know. And so what we've done until now is that we've gathered data on a few different indicators in different companies. People contributed themselves, and then we give companies an overview, and it's completely open for anyone. It's aggregated and anonymous and free and accessible, and they can see, you know, kind of how is our culture experienced, and we can understand it on a more granular level than you have. I'm not sure what the rules are in all the different countries that are represented here, but in Norway and in Sweden and in most countries, I think in Europe, because of GDPR, you as an employer are not allowed to ask anything about a person's sexuality or ethnicity or anything beyond age and gender. So companies actually don't really know what their makeup looks like or how people are perceiving their culture differently. And it's like so taboo to talk about. So we're trying to give that ability to the people who actually identify as something and who are basically invisible in the workplace for being that who they are. And then during Corona, we wanted to be at the forefront. So we wanted to do what we could do, given that we already have this platform which could gather data, but no one cared about what we were talking about anymore. At least in the beginning, everyone was just in survival mode. No one was thinking about diversity and equality. But when Corona broke out, we launched a survey within 2 weeks that mapped kind of how the pandemic had affected discrimination in the workplace, in which we found that every fifth employee experienced discrimination in redundancy processes. And the most common reason that women said that they'd been discriminated against was their gender. And the most common reason that men reported was their age. And in addition, 20% of the women said that they had not been given enough information, that nothing had been communicated well around the redundancy, and only 4% of the men said the same. And we presented these and many other results together with the Minister of Gender Equality in Sweden and in Norway, doing an Instagram live. And so then we also had everyone remembers the tragic murder of George Floyd. And we saw how millions of people around the world demonstrated and got really engaged, enthusiastic about the Black Lives Matter movement. And we know that obviously discrimination based on ethnicity happens a lot in Scandinavia as well, even though not everyone likes to think so. But we don't know a lot about how much or to what extent it occurs. And we believe that even though commitment and attention is really, really important, sometimes it's even more important to channel that attention into some action so that we can create positive change beyond just the movement and the attention that something gets for Blackout Tuesday. And we believe that the key to that is in data. So we also partnered with different organizations who are doing awesome work for ethnic minorities in Norway, and invited to a joint data donation where we're now gathering continuously data on how people are perceiving the workplace with different ethnic backgrounds, a data set that currently does not exist, at least to our knowledge, in Norway.
Fantastic.
I don't have too much time, so go ahead.
So Artika, did you, since you're a researcher, are you tracking data that's been happening over the past year with BLM, or doing any research studies that could possibly tie in to some of these data sets that Isabel's connecting the dots with?
Sure, of course. I mean, over the past 2 years, I served on the working group, the first in our nation, on reducing police-involved deadly shootings and our officer-involved deadly encounters. So, of course, Mr. Floyd's murder was a part of our analysis, and a part of why we're thinking about data constantly and about community organizing and women leading change. Because if we remember from the video, one of the things, of course, Mr. Floyd was crying out for his mother. I mean, in many ways, that was a battle cry for our local women to get politically involved and engaged. So we're collecting the data, not only looking at what are some of those trends of women getting politically engaged and setting a new agenda, not just around policing alone, but looking at economics, looking at education. So I'm here in the Twin Cities. Just for geography and background, Mr. Floyd was murdered just a few blocks from my church. Most of the footage that you saw on the news was probably a few blocks from my house. So for me, it's really been an opportunity to look at research and data to do another thing as well. I think Minnesota was denying that we have two separate worlds divided by race, really a tale of two cities. So now we have the data to show the disparities in criminal justice, the disparities in poverty, all those things came to light in a way that we can no longer deny it. So I'm using the data that's available, whether it's through our Department of Education and looking at some of the disparities. They're using the data to set what I talked about earlier, our statewide agenda and impact nationally, because it's not just about Mr. Floyd or Mr. Philando Castile locally here. We're dealing with the challenges all across the nation. Tamir Rice, we can get into Say Her Name, and Breonna Taylor. And at the root of many of the issues that we see is at the intersection of race and poverty. So it's really looking at the data to come up with practical solutions. Here's one quick example. I didn't start writing children's books for fun. I wrote children's books because 1 in 4 children in America are not reading at grade level. If you're not reading at grade level by the time you're in 4th grade, you're more likely to drop out 4 times. And if you drop out, the likelihood of you being arrested in your lifetime is 3.5 times. But here's the real piece of why we created the bookstore and the books, because so many of my clients learn how to read in prison. So I owed them an opportunity to help bridge these literacy gaps in some meaningful ways in the quest of justice and freedom. That's one woman looking at data, using it to create a practical solution. So that's what I train people on. That way they can work on their own issues. Everyone's not going to be passionate about the literacy gap or the criminal justice system. It may be some of the topics that you're talking about, the challenges facing mothers, the challenges facing the local economy. But how can I teach a system of 1, gathering data, 2, analyzing it, and then 3, turning that into a policy agenda, tangible social enterprises and other initiatives as well.
So this is such a strong example of one woman using her voice, Dr. Tyner. Thank you so much for your research and your work. And I want to shift gears into back to Alyssa. This is fundamental and core. It's like we have to own our truth. We have to own our power. The data is there, but ultimately it's communicating that to the people that are actually going to drive the change. How are we going to do this in a way that it can have mass impact and mass impact. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's so beautiful to hear everything about the data, because that's, less my world. And I collaborate with people in terms of the data. But so the place I'll take that question is there's always two things going on in our human world. There's our inner life and what's happening around us. And where I often find the disconnect is bridging between those two things. Like, how do I, the question is, how do I speak my truth? And if we're in a difficult situation in work, there may be so many norms, so to speak, about how we're supposed to speak up, what we're allowed to say, that we're just completely incongruent with our ability to bring our inner life and our inner world into conversation in that place. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing, and I do this with people around, personal relationships and also inside work environments, is when I have something to say, how do I say it? And how do I say it in a way that people can hear it? How do I say it in a way that feels true to me, isn't harmful to anyone else? And essentially, I think it really, Anu, you talked a little bit earlier about that we're going through this big change. And I think on some level, a lot of us are asking ourselves this question. I, again, love that we're calling this Amplifying Her Voice. And Joe, I love that that's also basically the name of your work, because there are just so many voices that haven't been heard. And therefore, we don't know what the human experience is. There are also a ton of women who I encounter, people, especially women, who don't know what their truth is. You say like, well, what are you thinking? What are you feeling right now? And it's like, I don't know. So the thing I'd like to offer is that we can start with our body. We can start with something very concrete. So I'll even ask everyone listening right now, take a moment just to notice what the strongest sensation in your body is right now. And if you need to take a moment to switch to paying attention, just take a second for that. And I'll just share that mine is, as soon as I started to pay attention, I'm noticing like a little kind of tingling, tremoring sensation of just, probably the energy of being on and speaking in front of other people. Did anyone want to share? Yeah, Priya, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask, do we probably have to also say that why does it happen that when you mention that, what I'm feeling, I'm not able to say it? Why is it that I feel that it's difficult to bring our authentic self outside? Is there data around that as well? Is it because of the obligations from the society? Is it because of the doctrination that is being deeply rooted? Or what is the cause of that?
Yeah, so I'll give you my best answer, which again is mostly for me embedded in anecdotal experience rather than data at the scale I work. But essentially what it comes down to is safety is what I find. It comes down to, is it safe for me to speak my whole truth in this moment? And so, for instance, if I know that like I have a tingling sensation right now, which to me might indicate emotionally I'm slightly nervous, let's say, it may actually not be safe, or it may not be appropriate for me to say so, but for me to at least acknowledge that then gives me some information about why I'm behaving the way I'm behaving in the outside world. And where it is safe, and I think women need to find those places in their lives where it is safe, we can go somewhere to another woman, to someone, a mentor, someone we feel connected to, and we can say, hey, that situation made me nervous.
Sorry.
Maybe we can't even say it in the moment, but yeah, so that's essentially what I want to offer is to pay attention to our inner world and try to, when it's safe, bridge it out to the outer world.
Sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. And basically that's what we all need. And I think women have to become safe haven for other people. and other women, and that's what is really needed, so that, we feel celebrated, we feel comfortable in sharing our challenges and sharing our sorrows, problems, etc. And then we basically support each other. And I think that's truly about amplifying her voice, as Anu says.
So all of the initial conversation has been giving me this indication of how you all work as leaders. And this is so critical because there is this feminine leadership. It's like you're standing in your power, you're standing in your truth, you're standing in your authentic self. And ultimately, I consider you all leaders in your space. And there's just like so many common denominators, still very, very effective. What are some of the tactics that you would encourage for young women and girls as they step into their power, Johan? Can you address that? Thank you.
Yeah, I think for women, I want to go back to the data as well. Having the evidential data and the data metrics is really the part of the picture that we're missing, and particularly in terms of the equality and diversity. And, it's about the fact that we now have to challenge the way things have been done archaically, historically. There's definitely not a one size fits all. So it is a collaborative approach when working with organizations about how they're going to have that journey. And for women, it's particularly difficult for women to reach senior executive level, to reach board level. And I always say have a strategic approach. So, there are some practical ways that you can actually level up, which are upskilling. Nobody goes into a job knowing everything. So upskill. Get yourself a mentor, a coach. There's no doubt, building your confidence and building yourself as a woman gives you that confidence to be your authentic self at work or at home or as a mum. Obviously I'm working in the workplace. I also advise to, if you can, get on a leadership program, on a development program. So, it's about, really emphasizing your talent, really growing your own talent as your own person, as a woman, and then actually working collaboratively with the women around you, because the strength is in numbers, right? So, we're not islands. And, if we have a collaborative approach, we're advocates for each other, we build each other up and we amplify each other's voices and we amp each other up. So there's it's a two-pronged approach. It's about having that practicality, the upskilling, doing all those things that you can do to be your best authentic self, and then working together collaboratively as women, which is why we're all here and why we're doing this amazing conference. That can be the start of your journey. And in my work, I found that I have so many women approaching me and say, how do I do this and how do I start? And for me it's an absolute privilege to be able to share my experience to help these women. And as I was saying in my introduction about dropping that ladder down. So it's for us, and us women on this call, us as leaders, is about, who is going to benefit from our experience? Who's going to benefit from us dropping the ladder down? And before now, I'm quite clear that we have been exhausted and we probably didn't have the capacity to do that. But I do think we now, 2021 is such an amazing historic moment for women, for Black women. And we have to literally ride this wave, take it with both hands and just have that collaboration, and we can all be a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely. So that was beautiful segue into the next conversation I want to take this towards. Funding for women. We all know the stats. We all know the data. We're it can't be even more clear than this. Funding actually dropped for women during the pandemic. There was an incline. PitchBook did a study recently, and then you can see a cliff. Just everything just fell. And it's not just in the United States. This is in Scandinavia. This is in all parts of the world. And We've got two women here that are talking about women in funding, specifically Priya and Janice. I'm going to let Priya speak first because she's with the World Business Angels Forum and has probably been following the data very closely from that standpoint because she's part of this Global Business Angels network. And then I'll let Janice comment on this because that's something that you've been following also. Priya first.
No, certainly, Anu, agree. And I did want to cover on this topic because this is a real big problem now. I mean, there are a lot of, with respect to inclusion and diversity, there are a lot of initiatives that are happening within corporates as well. And still somehow we are falling short of, all of this work because still there are women out there who are struggling to get funding in their organization, in their startups. They're struggling to get appreciation in the startups, struggling to get promotions in their startups, and so on and so forth. Whilst WBAF is doing a lot of work around this area, for example, we work very closely with the GFI 20, which is the Global Financial Inclusion Board, and that brings a lot of opportunities and a lot of women leaders on the board to get inspiration from. And the whole idea is that basically via WBAF, then more and more underrepresented people get funding. But having said that, the numbers are still quite low. And there is a lot of effort still needed with respect to investors showing more trust and faith in women entrepreneurs. It's been proven that women are better leaders, women are good leaders, and there's no way that we should be sitting behind or standing behind in the queue. So certainly a lot of changes are needed, and I think those are coming up. But because of the COVID, especially, the whole economy has toppled as well, and that is, I think, resulted in a even worse impact on women entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Okay, Janice, you want to follow up on this? And then I'll get Christy after this. Go ahead.
Yes. So, recently I was talking to a woman who had fundraised for her business, and she is a mother of two, and she had taken time out of the workforce, and she's created something that's truly problem solving for all working parents in the US, virtual daycare. And it is really important understand that so much of what happens in funding happens outside of a meeting room. And women who are not exposed to the funding world don't know the model. They don't know the framework of how investors receive funding. Now, there is a problem on the funding side. That is first and foremost. And I don't want to indicate that this is something that women have to solve. But, many women, especially mothers, don't have the capacity to go on the funding roadshow, to make those connections, to have those sidebar conversations with the people who are going to give them the guidance on what do I need to say in my pitch to actually receive funding. There's a formula to this. And I think many business owners who don't have that mentorship, who don't have that network, don't know that there is an actual formula for what you want to say in these conversations early on to be heard. And so they're working so hard, yet they're not getting the connections. And then they don't have the man hours that are going to allow them to develop in that arena. So what I want people to realize is that, number one, there is a way to become educated on how to present yourself in the best way possible, how to identify which funding sources are better targets for you. There's oftentimes where people are trying to seek funding in a way that, it might not be aligned with what their business mission is. It's really important that we get smarter on teaching women how to seek the right investors. And in fact, when the investors are the right path. There are many ways to fund a business outside of VC funding. And I don't want women to think that if they don't receive funding, that is the end of your business. You should absolutely continue to pursue it, but you should absolutely fund your business in a different way if that is not possible to you. And, there are women and men who are out there trying to help women find the investments that they need. And for those who are investors, and Priya, I'm so happy to know about your work because this is so important. We need more people with diverse backgrounds and experience and initiative to take charge here, because this is really pushing the industry, and the incredible work that women founders are doing and the performance that they're gaining is demonstrating to the industry that this is not just a feel good thing. This is a business metric. This is a necessity for us to move forward. And so, investors and people who are involved in the funding side, it's so important to look at your network, look at your professional network, and make sure that you have women in your network. It's the only way they're going to have the network to reach out to when they are seeking funding. It's the only way that you're going to have people in your network who happen to be female or happen to be Black female or happen to be whatever, that you can actually say, hey, that's my go-to person for this opportunity.
Absolutely. And I want to shift the conversation now to women entrepreneurs. And I mean, the funding is one thing. The issue is there. It's the data is there. But real life stories, I mean, this is the make or break. And especially during COVID, there's been more businesses started by women than any other home-based businesses specifically. And one of the things that I came across, very interesting statistics, was that in April 2020, 100,000 new podcasts were started. 70% of those were by women, right? So this is like new businesses that are starting. This is why I brought Christy into this side of the conversation, because she's not only created her own podcast, she's had a podcast, but now she's creating this network. We're doing the same thing. We've got the State of Women Podcast Network, and we're talking about collaborating, so that's all good. But ultimately, there's a new wave of digital entrepreneurs that are women that are coming to the forefront, that are going to be talking about these issues of funding, that are going to be talking about these issues of race, that are going to be talking about these issues of equality in the workplace and data and things like that. And so, Christy, tell us about your entrepreneurial experience during the pandemic, positives, negatives, things that are coming out of this, and how that's driving change.
So as a mom, as a working mom, the pandemic has been tricky because usually I lean on the fact that my daughter's at school. But with virtual learning, it was just, a little bit of a tornado in the house, adjusting to all of those things. But it's been interesting. I'm glad you brought up the new podcasts that have come into the industry, because it is true, and that is accurate. And I find, like, in particular, actually, and I was very surprised to find this, the one genre of podcasts that increased immensely compared to the other ones, the other genres were kids and family, because parents were not only looking for education, they were also trying to find ways to keep their kids entertained, right? So we have a lot of educational kids podcasts. We have a ton of history, story time podcasts that have come into the market. And same with also moms just talking about their own experiences in the podcast industry, because, they have so much to share. And it's just, in general, amplifying her voice. So it's been tricky. It is what pushed me to start the network, to be able to empower these new voices in the space. And like I said, I primarily focus on Canada, because I feel like there's voices out there and we need to get them out. And some people may be looking to start a podcast and they've had no idea where to start. So it would be great to provide those opportunities for women to start their own businesses through their podcasts.
Fantastic. So we as Sheconomy have started launching a podcast production service, and have found that there's a number of growing opportunities for women in emerging markets specifically. Like, this is a new digital skill that they have, and it's home-based business, and it's a way for them to do audio editing or graphic design, or it's even just production and things like that. But there's a whole ecosystem now that's just like opening, and this would not have been high priority had it not been for COVID. And there's been like this new opportunity to just engage, reskill, like you said. There's like new avenues, and also to collect data. I mean, one of the reasons why I started our own apps is so we can get data on who's listening to women's health, who's listening to women's investing, who's listening to women's entrepreneurship. And once we have that data, we can actually come up with policies, programming, and initiatives geared towards women, because ultimately there's a bottom billion that's missing that doesn't have access to that, number one. Then you have these women in underserved countries that don't have an iPhone, right? And we know all these things. And so ultimately tying it all together is this thread of, yes, we need to use our voice. Yes, we need to like have better metrics. Yes, we have like a needle that needs to be moved. How are we going to move it? And we need drivers like you. Each one of you is a driver of change in your own way, whether you're funding, whether you're checking the data, whether you're using your voice to make incredible content, or just ultimately being that advocate for people that don't have advocates. And so ultimately, I'm going to give you, we have like another 10 minutes. I'm going to
actually say something quickly. I just want to also say, tying in some of the themes that we've mentioned earlier on about imposter syndrome, and Dr. Tyner, you talked about, a woman at home being the CEO of her household. I want to say I started creating online courses in 2016, quite early. In the wave of all of that. And I remember I think I started creating them even a couple of years earlier in about 2014. And I remember sitting in a room a couple of years later, with about 1,000 other entrepreneurs who were working on online courses. And what was said was so valuable. We were at a conference, and, people said, you're the crest of, you're the beginning of this wave. And it hit me so palpably, because I know I was feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm behind. Why didn't I do this sooner? So I just want to say to any women who are thinking still about starting a podcast or creating online content or whatever it is kind of inevitable to have those feelings of, I should have done this sooner. Who am I to do this? Or everyone was in that wave in April 2020. Now I'm too late. But just to say that it's never too late to start, and the world does need to hear your voice. I'm not your voice, so do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just so much out there to be done. So like we said, it's inevitable. Like, unless you do it, like, ultimately, it's not going to get done. And we want to give these opportunities that people who were like barricaded, they had barriers. And now we're like, that's part of what my frustration has been, is they would if they could, and they just couldn't. And so now, when you open that floodgate and the world is going digital, and you guys are like at the forefront of everything that you do. I know, Isabel, you had a podcast at one time. Are you still doing it?
No, I'm not. I did have a podcast about a year and a half. It's called Future Forecast, and it's about technology, sustainability, and leadership. And I had lots of great guests on it. I had Simon Sinek and Richard Quest and Randy Zuckerberg and Tracy Chow, and so many incredible personalities. But unfortunately, the company producing the podcast had to pause it because of the pandemic, and they were kind of living off of conference income, which everyone knows kind of disappeared. And then things got crazy in my own company, so I didn't really have time to continue with it either. But it's still there, so feel free to listen if anyone wants to.
I tried to actually load it onto our app, onto the Future Forecast, and it's in Norwegian, and so it was like I wanted to see if it would work.
It's in English. The podcast is in English. Yeah, definitely.
Maybe it was a website that I found, but I'll check it out and follow up with you after this is over. Advice to young women and girls, and then we're gonna ask everyone, like, big ask for 2021. Like, what is it that you need more of? Because we're gonna have a lot of international people watching this, and so each of you has like some goals of your own, goals for your company, goals for yourself. Maybe we can start there, and then we'll do investing girls at the end. What are some of the big things that you are looking to accomplish your doctor? You want to go first? Big goals. Ask of the global community.
I think my big goal and ask of the global community is to maximize the resources that we've made available. During this time of COVID, we turned it into a virtual classroom, a learning laboratory. So we've created all our content to make it available on YouTube and our website. So take the information, strengthen and build upon your leadership skills, and use it to, whether you're the emerging entrepreneur, the techie, whatever it is, building those core skills that you heard Johan speak of. And I think the other piece, this is just my ask for everyone. I think oftentimes our message for fellow women is to build our tribe, come together. Those are all essential. But I also think I want you to have beyond self-care, I want you to have some self-love and self-preservation. I want you to understand, I've been reflecting a lot on Nina Simone's quotes of that she would no longer stay at the table when love wasn't being served there. I want you to have enough love for yourself, for your gifts and talents, for your direction, for your story and what you'll give to the world, to know when maybe that's not the best situation for you, to know when maybe you'll have to create something new or start all over again or rebuild or transform a system, because I think in many ways we're still stuck. We'll all talk about innovation, we'll all talk about technology, but we're really not having the conversation on how do we radically transform systems and the transformation that will allow every woman, every girl from around the world to be able to walk in her own shoes proudly and be able to say, I am my sister's keeper. And this power of self-preservation means I have to know my story. I have to know, I talk about superheroes, so I have to know my own superpower. But I think there's something to be said. We have to transcend this message of self-care, finding balance, finding our tribe, to really find self-love and self-preservation in ways that we've never thought of.
Amen, sister. Amen. Johanne, could you follow up on that one?
No, no, I can't. I think you're very hard to follow up on. That was brilliant. No, I mean, what I would say is, ultimately, my ultimate goal is about really, driving real change and having real equality and diversity, inclusiveness. But I do believe that we're at the start of that journey. So I think we've got a long way to go. And I think, organizations really need to be asking themselves the fundamental questions about whether they're ready to have those conversations and whether they're really ready to shift the dial, because I've most certainly come up against those who think they are, but absolutely are not ready. And in terms of women in those organizations, have that confidence, do those things that I talked about earlier, that practical, strategic approach, that will ensure you have that inner confidence to really go for what you want. And I mean, what I would say is just, I think what Artika was saying about we're all still in the system and the way we think is very much system-led, but it's like you can buck the trend. COVID has let us have a reset. And, just do what you're passionate about. I mean, if you do what you're passionate about, you will be successful. But I would just lastly like to say it's not an easy road. I have probably never worked harder in my life, but it is, the most rewarding and satisfying, thing for your soul as a woman to be going, we are all the new CEOs, we are all the new faces of 2021. And, we just have to keep on going. But we have to keep on going with that journey and supporting each other.
Beautiful. Okay, so the next one is Janice. I'm going to let you take this.
So my goal, and it's definitely not limited to 2021 because there's a lot of work to be done here, but I want to eliminate money and career stress from others, because we need to be able to focus on what's important. And it is really hard to focus on all of the things in our lives. 2020 was the best demonstration of that. If we are burdened by money stress, it affects all of us in ways that really ruins the things that we do care about. And I want to say to women, my ask is, if you have the ability to take risk in your life, take risk. Whether that's speaking out about things that you don't agree with the way they're going, or if it's taking business risk and trying something new, please take risk for those who can't take risk, and ask for what you need help with. Ask questions about what you don't understand. So often I hear from women who start businesses, they're so happy to meet women in this space because they feel like we understand each other at a different level. And I totally agree that we do, but don't wait for those relationships. Seek them out. Find people who can answer your questions, because otherwise what I find is that it's women 10 years down the road who say, I had this idea once and I didn't pursue it because I didn't have the right people guiding me. Don't wait for those guides. Get those guides on your own if you have the capacity to do so.
Absolutely. Christy, you want to follow up? Can you hear us?
Of course, yeah. One of the main the main messages that I have for my podcast, and applies to everyone, is you have the power to make impact, right? Don't second guess yourself. Don't think twice. Don't hesitate. Because could you imagine if, Jeff Bezos of Amazon didn't create Amazon because there was already eBay or Walmart or whatever it was? Like, could you imagine that? Like, we have the power to be amazing and be brilliant. And really, it's just about not being scared to not fit in the mold. I've never fit in the mold, and I've embraced that. And that's totally been okay. It hasn't been an easy journey growing up, not fitting in the mold. However, I am where I am because of that. I empowered myself through it and I embraced it. So that's my biggest piece of advice and goal for everyone listening.
Awesome. Alyssa, and then I would like to go back to Isabel closing. Go ahead, Alyssa.
Yeah. Well, I think that the path to a future that looks different than our past is liberating our voices. And we have to take individual responsibility for doing that. But when that happens, collectively, it completely changes the world we live in. And so my vision is that we learn to find our voice, to speak our truth. I know those are cliches, but they're literally cliches because they're exactly the thing. And, in terms of how I'm here to support around that, it's about embodiment and expression. And so I have my community that I'm supporting, all women and men 18 and over to come join me. And I've worked with young women and girls in the past very much. And there's so much work to be done for making sure girls understand that they are allowed to speak their truth, to understand it, and to find safe places to do so.
Beautiful. Isabel, give it to me.
So my goal is to get more transparency and equality in the workplace. It's as big and hairy as that. And in order to achieve that, I need more data. So if anyone out there wants to help us, please contribute by leaving a review and asking for people that you know to leave a review. And in terms of advice, I was thinking everything has been kind of said already, but something that at least inspires me, I don't even have kids, but to be really conscious of how we raise our children, and especially how we raise our young boys. Raise them to be feminists, raise them to understand that this is their issue as much as it is ours. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. Raise boys to be strong and confident and feminist, of course.
And I want to comment on that one. I have a little girl, but I've always said that, the most advanced societies that I've lived in, come across, are the ones that have strong boys, feminist boys. And I had the privilege of living in Sweden and in Stockholm for several years, and can see it. Can you all hear me? It was night and day, like growing up in India versus growing up in watching kids grow up in Scandinavia. So for those of you that are watching internationally, yes, strong mothers who have sons and raise them to be feminists. I definitely see this as a way for our entire society moving forward. And thank you for all the moms out there for the great work that you're doing. And it's very obvious that in this pandemic time, how much we've all pushed ourselves beyond our limits, and the entrepreneurs that are here, and the people that have had challenging work situations and whatnot. I mean, it's been a combination of everything. Yet, we've all found our way. We're all in a position now to not only help ourselves, but to help others. And I congratulate you, and I thank you, and I honor all of you sisters that are here today. So thank you very much. And I hope you will reach out if you ever need anything, and know that we're going to be continuing these Amplifying Her Voice sessions. The next one will be in 2 months, Mother's Day, March 8th, 9th, and 10th, and we hope you'll all be a part of it. But we're going to try to track data as much as we can going forward. Who's in it? who's doing it, what do you have to share, and we're going to keep you accountable. So thank you all. And yeah, stick around for the conference as much as you can and share it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Great meeting, guys. Bye.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.